Final day of voting in Russian-hosted referenda in several parts of Ukraine, 4 Russian-held regions where the Kremlin insists people are independently deciding their future, but many international governments say the Russians are engaged in a sham. The referenda asks people whether they want their regions to become part of the Russian Federation or not. Polling stations have been set up in Donetsk, Luhansk and parts of Zaporizhia and Kherson, a total of around 15% of Ukrainian territory that the Kremlin is now believed to be trying to seize. The past 4 days saw 2 types of voting. One, where armed soldiers could be seen going door to door amid reports of voter intimidation, and the other, full-fledged voting booths that have been set up. Reports suggest there is one ballot for each entire household, so not everyone is entitled to an individual vote. The British government said today that Vladimir Putin is preparing to welcome the predetermined outcome of the referenda by formally annexing the disputed regions within the next few days. He would seek to redraw Ukraine's borders, change the nationality of 4 million people, and engage in what the Kremlin is calling the reunification of Russia. Ukraine and its allies in the West have called the voting a sham and pledged not to recognize any of the results. President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned that annexation will destroy any chance of peace talks. The United States is prepared to impose additional economic costs on Russia, although there are questions about just how much economic punishment can still be inflicted against Moscow, given the size of sanctions packages that have already been unveiled. The scenes playing out in Ukraine are ripped from Russia's 2014 playbook in Crimea. Moscow held a referendum there, and for the last 8 years, the Kremlin has maintained that Crimea is part of Russia, an assertion rejected by Western governments. For more on all of this, I'm joined today by Yehor Brailyan, a journalist covering international security and defense issues in Ukraine. He joins us live from Kyiv. Mr. Brailyan, while the Ukrainian government is absolutely rejecting these referenda, and along with Western governments saying that the outcome of them will not be respected or honoured, the reality is that the Russians have managed to go ahead and hold these elections. Is there not a concern that they are simply trying to create new facts on the ground to which at some point the rest of the international community is going to have to catch up?
First of all, we have to understand that the Russian Federation is needed this so-called referendum, because we can't call it in such a way, because it's performance, it's circus, it's a manipulation of the global public opinion, but it's not a referendum. And Russia is needed either to make the annexation of the territories of the south of Ukraine more legal for the international audience. And that's why it's very important for the whole world to reject all of these actions which Russia is doing in the south of Ukraine, because it's illegal and it's the violation of all international laws. And that world which was formed after the Second World War, and these borders and all this international stuff, it was destroyed by Vladimir Putin. And it's very important to understand that Vladimir Putin is using all possible instruments to spread its own propaganda, that so-called the people of Donbass or something like that. It's all wrong, and the world must step up in punishing Russia for it, because the world didn't punish Russia for this so-called referendum, or what it was, the annexation of Crimea 8 years ago. And for example, such countries as the United Kingdom of Great Britain, Northern Ireland, they have finally recognized only 2 years ago that the Western approach towards Russian aggression against Ukraine 8 years ago was weak. And I hope that the West...
So, Mr. Braylian, let me ask you about that situation, particularly as it pertains to Crimea, because, as you say, the referendum that essentially led to the annexation of Crimea remains still an unsolved issue and may well have inspired Vladimir Putin to hold these referenda today in Ukraine. What should the West do differently this time around that it didn't do with regard to Crimea?
First of all, is to kick out the Russia from the UN Security Council, to kick out Russia from all possible international organizations. There is no place for Russia in the civilized world. And Russia must become a truly pariah. Truly pariah, a country in which foreign companies won't make business, a country in which it would be impossible to do all other economic stuff. Russian leadership and Russian population, they must understand that they are terrorists, and they are committing war crimes, and that's all. And the West must step up, first of all, in sanctioning Russia, in energy, not only in energy, but first of all in technology, because the armed forces of Ukraine have found American technologies in drones from Iran, which were supplied to Russia from Tehran. And it's very important that the sanctions have to be like complex. It's not would be like, okay, we will sanction it, but won't sanction that. Sanctions, military aid of Ukraine, and starting the process of tribunal against Vladimir Putin and his inner circle. And the world must understand that there are no good Russians. All Russians are, at this or that point, are imperialists. And they want to do only one thing. They want to conquer other territories. They want to gain the influence all over the world. Remember, the Sahel region, former French colonies in the West Africa, remember Latin America, and remember different parts of the world. Russia is a global problem.
Yehor Braylian, a journalist specialising in defence and security cooperation issues, joining us there live from Kyiv and really underscoring the very high stakes that lie ahead in the days and weeks to come. Thank you very much indeed for that.